I'm a grateful alcoholic. My sobriety date is January 1994, and by the grace of God, so far, I haven't had to change that date.
God bless you, George.
Right? And my least important, my name is George. I'll give you, because we started with this thing with the Big Book George, let me get that out of the way, how I got the name. There's a story behind every story, and if you get a nickname in Alcoholics Anonymous, they say you've arrived. I don't know about that. Mine came on a resentment from somebody. I walked into the rooms. I was pretty new. I was just telling the story. See, God does work in spite of me. I was sitting in a room with my sponsor. I was on my fourth step. I was about 5.5, 6 months sober. And a guy is sitting up on the podium, and he's talking about being angry. And I read that part out of the book, Big Book. I raised my hand. He called on me, and I read that part out of the Big Book that said, "This was our course. So although we didn't like the way others disturb us, they like ourselves were sick too. We asked God to show the same tolerance, pity, kindness. We cheerfully grant a sick friend when someone offended. We said, this is a sick man. God saved me from being angry." He turned around after I read that to him. And he said, "You snot-nosed punk. Who do you think you are? Big Book George or something?" And I just let it go. My sponsor taps me on the back, says, "Keep doing that. Just keep reading the book." And now, come back 6 months later, I went to a alkathon with one of my guys, and we're walking in the room, and he says, "I owe somebody walking in the door a tremendous apology." I said, "What did you do to him?" He says, "I don't even know him. I didn't remember what happened." And he said, "Yeah, about 6 months ago, I was in a meeting. I was talking about how angry I was. And this little guy, I called him snot-nosed punk. And who does he think he is, Big Book George? He gave me such a resentment that after 13 years of being in the program, I finally opened the book. I finally got a sponsor, and I finally did the steps. Today, we're still good friends. And now when I say Big Book George, I mean it with love. That name has stuck with me. So it's a big name to keep up, because people will say, "Well, you're Big Book George. Where does it say this? Where does it say that?" So you get to study the book a lot more than you normally would have, I think. But that's where the name came from. I don't like being introduced that way, and I'll tell you why. My name is George, and there's a reason for that. It separates me from you guys. I know that's my nickname, We had a lot of nicknames. We had Carpenter Joe, and I remember a guy by the name of Jimmy the Bear, and we had Dennis O, who never give his full name ever anywhere. And then other people give their full name. It depends on why. But when you get a nickname in Alcoholics Anonymous and you're introduced that way, I'm being separated from you. It's against tradition, really. So that's just a pet peeve. But that's my name. I know that's my name. Funny, I wasn't going to talk about traditions, but I guess I will, because there's two things I wanted to touch on. I'm going to go to the forward for a minute and go to the forward of the second edition. And it says a couple of things. AAs had to hang together or die separately. We had to unify the fellowship or pass off the scene. We discovered the principles by which an individual alcoholic could live. So we had to evolve principles by which AA groups and AA as a whole could survive and function effectively. That's tradition one. It was thought that an alcoholic man or woman could never be excluded from our society. It's tradition three. Our leaders must serve but never govern is two. That each group has to be autonomous, that's tradition 4. And if there is no professional class or therapy, 8. There are no fees or dues, 7. Our expenses were to be met by voluntary contributions, 7 again. There was to be at least possible organization, even our service, 9. Our public relationships was based on attraction rather than promotion, tradition 11. And it was decided that all members ought to be anonymous to the level of press, radio, and film, which is 11. You just went through all 12 traditions, in case you never did them before. And it's in one paragraph in the Big Book. That's where they all broke out of. And I like the traditions, because if it wasn't for the traditions, I wouldn't be here. Unity is the key. And when I came in here, the way they told me I would get unified is to be of service. So I love service. I'm always, when I'm asked to speak, I'll always say yes. I never turn down that. If I'm asked to chair, I'll say yes. I go to meetings regularly. I don't go to 7 meetings a day anymore. I'm not a newcomer. I think my head's cleared up a little bit better than that after almost 30 years, a little over 30 years now. So I still make 4 meetings a week. Why? Because there's somebody walking in that door that needs help. The same way there were the old timers there for me, I want to be there for that newcomer. That was real important to me. And I did a lot of service at the beginning. The very first job I got in Alcoholics Anonymous was to be a greeter. They told me to stand by the door and welcome everybody to the 10 a.m. meeting at the old time, at the old Bottom Line that used to be on Veritas and the Veritas building many years ago. And I would be at the front door and saving. And there was a long table like this, and a guy by the name of Bob Welsh, who's long gone, used to sit over here, and he said, would you get here a little earlier and save me that seat, and you sit over here? So I get there 5 minutes earlier, like he asked me, and save him a seat, and I'd sit here. He said, well, now that you're here 5 minutes early, why don't you get here 5 minutes earlier that and stand by the door and welcome everybody to the 10 a.m. meeting? Now I'm at the meeting, instead of 15 minutes, 25 minutes early. He said, well, now that you're doing that, why don't you get here another 5 minutes earlier and make coffee? Now I'm making coffee, I'm saving him a seat, I'm being a greeter. I don't know what I'm doing, I'm brand new. I'm smoking 2 cigarettes at once at the time, one in the ashtray, one going in my mouth, and burning my shirt, having a cup of coffee, spilling it every day, clearing the table except for Bob. And then after the meeting, say, now I want you to help clean up. And that's how I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. Ashtrays, brooms, and chairs, the ABCs that I came in. And I think they're very important. Very helpful when I got here. And then I would be one of those guys that would complain about everything. My ex-wife won't let me talk to the kids. One of the things I was told to do, there's not that many young women with babies anymore, but in 1994, seemed to be a plethora of them. And my sponsor would say, you see that woman over there with that baby? Why don't you go over there and ask if you can babysit? I said, why? He said, because I told you to. Okay. I go over and ask her if I could babysit. For an hour, I babysit. And then I have to wait for another meeting to get to my meeting because I was playing with a kid up for an hour. Next meeting came, that was at 10 o'clock, now the 12 o'clock meeting. He said, see that woman over there? Go babysit. Came to, by 5 o'clock, I was at 3 meetings already, and I haven't even gotten to a meeting. And after about 2 months of it, I went over to Bob and I said, listen, I'm tired of this. All I do is babysit. He said, good, you're doing it for 2 reasons. I said, wait a minute, you told me the only reason I'm doing this is that way that women can get to a meeting, maybe the only meeting she can make. What's the second reason? He said, so you can practice being the father you never were. Now, I love good, tough sponsorship. I believe in it. Hurt, painful, but truth hurts. And that's one thing about the men and women who sponsored me. I had a woman sponsor. Her name was June G. out of California. When John Edwards, my 4th sponsor, it was all a lot about sponsorship because it's key for me. When John Edwards came down with Alzheimer's, we were on our way to a convention. We had to bring him back home. She was the speaker at the, I think it was the 54th State Convention. And on the way up, I knew John was losing his faculty. I'd call him every day. Some days he knew me, some days he didn't. And I asked June, as long as John was alive, I would never give up my sponsor. Would she be my service sponsor? And every week I spoke to her 3 times a week, and she kept me real busy. One of my other people that got me very involved in service was Tommy Dayton. For those people who knew Tommy Dayton, who actually did her 5th step in the back of the car on the way to Ebby's funeral, and down in Broward County. She was involved, and Joe Lamb. There were so many people that have touched my life that have been different parts of my service structure in the early days. And my sponsor today is Jimmy Hayward. I can use his last name because he lets me. Jimmy H. Zip your lip Jimmy for most of you guys. Nicknames. And he's my sponsor today. I've had 7 sponsors in the 30 years. I buried 5 of them. One of them is now living, June is still alive, and my other sponsor is living in Texas, the man who took me through the book. So I've always had a sponsor because they told me I can't do this alone. And I was a clamorer. I was complaining. My ex-wife didn't let me talk to the kids. Well, that was an ugly scene in part of my early recovery. I did a lot of damage. And I would complain about it all the time. And my sponsor said, did you ever read the book? What does the book say? I said, I don't know. What does the book say? He said, it says, for the alcoholic who is able and willing to get well, little charity in an ordinary sense is warranted and needed. The man who cries for money or shelter before conquering alcohol is on the wrong track. Yet we go to great extremes to provide each other with these things when such action is warranted. This may seem inconsistent, but we think not. I was complaining because I came from New York. I ran a union in New York. I ran the projectionist union, Local 306 IATSE, back in 1987 through 92 or 3, somewhere around there. Came down here in 94. Lost the job because of my drinking. I lost the marriage because of my drinking. Wasn't able to see my kids. It was real ugly. And I came down here and I was complaining because the only job I can get was working at Denny's or the Olive Garden for $1.97 an hour. And when you make $33 an hour and you go to $1.90, you complain. What else do you do? And I was complaining. So my sponsor read that to me. And then he says, you got to start somewhere. This is the one place you get to build 2 lives in one lifetime. It says, it's not a matter of giving that's in question, but when and how to give that makes the difference between failure or success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely on our assistance rather than upon God. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply don't stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of the dependence upon God. Burning the conscience of every man that he may get well regardless of anyone. The only condition, he trusts God and clean house. So I'm a clamorer, and my sponsor said, I got to stop clamoring, and I got to stop busy in Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I'm babysitting, which I didn't mind. Now I know why. I'm doing setups, I'm doing cleanups, I'm doing everything I'm told to do. And I walk out of an AA meeting at 6 months of sobriety and started with a set of papers to give my children up. The reason I believed I came in alcohol was not my problem. My ex-wife was my problem. My job was the problem. The federal government was my problem. I had a lot of problems, but none of them were alcohol. And now I get these papers to give my kids up, and now I'm angry. So my sponsor asked me a straight question. He said, well, see that man over there? His name was Ben Troxel. He's no longer alive. And Ben, he said, I want you to go talk to him. And I went over to Ben. He says, I know that you need to talk to me. And he says, I got an answer for you. And he said, you don't even hear the question. He says, but I got an answer for you. He said, but I'm going to ask you a question first. I said, all right, what's your question? He said, what kind of custodian you were to those children? And I said, well, I'm sending her this amount of money. He said, I'm not asking what you're giving her. Well, I'm not asking what you do with them. I asked you a question. What kind of custodian were you to those children? And that was the first time I realized I was absentee, because alcohol separated me from the great removed my kids from my life because of my behaviors, because of what alcohol did to me. And I realized that. So he told me, that, this is, you're an alcoholic, and I want you to start writing letters to those children and I mailed them one, and I came back all ripped up, and I was told I couldn't make contact with my children anymore. Otherwise I'd go to jail, because that was how bad the divorce was. So he told me to start writing letters and putting them away. In I guess it was 2018, I got a call. I was working at the West Broward Club in those days, helping out. I got cut in my hand. I lost the ability to work. I came down with cancer. Normal stuff like everybody goes through. And I didn't drink. And I was being more active doing service. I was all over the place doing service. Kept me busy. Kept me out of me. And I had left the West Broward Club to come up here, back down to Delray, where I got clean in that area, Boca Del Rey area. And I come back down here, and I get a phone call from the old West Broward Club. They wanted to know if I knew somebody by the name of Cassie. I said, the only Cassie I know is my daughter. Well, she said, they left you a phone number. So I called, and it was my daughter. And she said she hired a detective to track me down and find out who her father was. And that was in April. She came down. It was on my 20th anniversary, the day of that happened. Now, God does work in mysterious ways. I will tell you that she came down in that April, and we started a relationship that's been going on now. I have a tremendous relationship with my daughter. I've been up there to see her. She's been down here to see me. She's been to meetings. She's not one of us, thank God. Can't say the same about my son. We grew, and I got to meet my children. And my daughter's in my life, and my grandkids are in my life. Now, my son, on the other hand, because of the way I was, that relationship hasn't healed. But I've gotten a lot of adopted children in Alcoholics Anonymous. I get these things called sponsees that I get to help them with their marriage problems. Going in, I've been in court with a couple of the people I sponsor, getting their kids back, getting guardian items to be with their children so they can be with their children. That is nothing I came in here planned for. All I wanted when I got in here was for the pain to stop. And the only way I knew how to get out of the pain was to get outside of myself. And the only way you get outside of yourself is that you got to do this process. And the process is not just about service. I had to do step work. I went to AWOLs. There's a guy, David Todd, who came out of Boston prison, started a thing called an AWOL, an Alcoholic Way of Life. Did that down in Fort Lauderdale. I went on retreats. I did as much as I could to stay involved. I've been to conventions. I go to the Big Book Seminar, not AA approved literature in there, but it's very helpful for newcomers. I believe in that. To me, now I can go line to line with whatever they're saying. I've gone for the last 30 years. So, but it's all good. The retreats are very important. I've gone to spiritual retreats since I've got here at least once a year. Every January I go away so I can redo my steps. Now, I know there are old timers that have done their steps once and they're done with them. And that's the way they learn and that's what they do. I'm not one of those people. I'm one of those that do my steps annually. Everybody has a right to do it any way they're comfortable, as long as they don't do it with their own thinking. 10-step keeps me away from writing another 4-step. My 4 steps to now are annually, and it's to see what I can let go of that I don't need, that I've learned this year, that's not serving my program anymore, or the program anymore, and the things that I need to work on. And that's what I do a 4-step for every year. And I write my 10th step, and at the end of the year, I look over them and see what I can change and what I can do. So what I was told to do if I wanted to stay sober is to jump in the middle and get involved. And if I stand on the outside and think I can figure this out, it's going to take me out. And I had to remember that. There's a great line on page 112, and it's the secret to the program. And it's the first 3 words. All it says is, read this book. Reading the book without applying what's in the book is not going to keep me here. I need you people, which is where I hear my God through that second tradition. There's a loving God that expresses himself in our group conscience, and every meeting I go to, I will hear God speak through one of you. And I think that's enough, so I'm going to do like my sponsor and zip my lip and enjoy the trip.